So today is Monday, January 4th, aka the start of 2021 for me. I wanted to document my sort of healing, sober journey because the last few months have been super hard. I went back and forth with substance use, and I try to give myself a bit more self-compassion, recognizing that I'm not someone who usually likes to feel high or feel really, really drunk anymore. But 2020 was really hard. I felt the most isolated I have in years. In a way, felt alone and lonely, even though I was living at home with my sister, and like eventually my mom moved back home. And then, and just in ways I just internally did not feel good. And so I think it was like 6 months into the lockdown, probably by like July, August, I really recognized that I wasn't happy at all with anything. Nothing brought me joy. I found it hard to get out of bed sometimes. So yeah, those are all signs of me feeling my depressive symptoms to the max. I tend to push people away and like want to be alone and like not leave my bed and like cry and like watch so much TV that it's like sickening. I think I watched New Girl about 10 times over, which is, I don't find that embarrassing, but I just like, I find comfort in watching shows that I really, really like over and over again. So yeah, I went through that and then had a little bit of a breakdown and realized that what am I in control of? Like, let me try and use some healthier, I don't want to say healthier, but more helpful coping strategies. And so I reached out to my friends more, hung out with people that I called friends more. I just tried to be more of like an upbeat person. And I think the rush to do that was also problematic because I wasn't really addressing the underlying issues of what I was like experiencing. And now I realize how sort of regressive that can be sometimes. So yeah, so I did that, and then August felt good. And then I was like, okay, I'm seeing this, and like I'm seeing like better patterns. I'm seeing my behaviors are improving to what I like, my standard of living, like of what I appreciate. So then I started school again, and I'm in grad school. It's my last year, so I started in September, and it was a lot more full on than I thought it would be. It was, and then also I accepted this research position with my favorite professor. I was really excited about that. I'm thinking, okay, perfect. This is a really helpful distraction because this is something I'm interested in. I love this professor. I want to do this, and I genuinely like thought I did, but now I look back on it and it was like I was just like trying so hard to distract myself from like what I was actually feeling. Some people can do that. I'm like the worst at it because at some point I'll just like, once I hold in all my emotions for a really long time, I'll just explode and like completely break down. So yeah, so September came around, I was doing placement at an agency, like between 20 to 25 hours a week, and then I was working as a research assistant for a few hours a week, and then I was also doing my part-time job that is at a shelter for I only work there 4 days a month, so it's every other weekend. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up when you're suppressing your emotions and trying to like go with the routine of it all. So yeah, I did that, and then I like my anxiety levels, like I just were through the roof. And then I just like kept just getting stoned and like thinking that it would make me feel better. So it was just like a time for me to not be in my thoughts and not be like feel alone and feel shitty about myself, even though for the most part I fucking love my life. I find that like I'm doing everything I want to do, and so I find sometimes like I'm a textbook case of what like a client is when they start therapy, because there's so many factors and things going on that are perfect. I love grad school. I love my program. Well, love isn't pretty. I'm enjoying grad school for what it's teaching me, and it's been the perfect program. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. I love being in school, and I'm excited to finish school to work in the field that I'm working in. My parents are so supportive. They have their flaws, but they, to me, are just ideal supportive parents, because they, regardless of like where I'm at in life, unconditionally like support me, which is hard and rare to like it's like hard to come by, as like I don't know, like there's so many, like every family has its dysfunctions, but at least at the end of the day they're supportive. My siblings are really great. They are always there for me. So and then on top of all of that, I also have amazing supportive friends, and I purposely cultivated like this amazing group of women in my life who I speak to all the time and who also unconditionally love and support me. So like on paper, I think everything in my life just seems like perfect, and what like 30 something woman wouldn't, like what else could I want? And so yeah, like on textbook it seems like everything's good, but like I've always had underlying internal stuff that I just like push away. And so it makes sense like this year, especially with COVID, that like everything comes to the forefront and I'm forced to think about these things. And actually, I hate saying this because I wouldn't say this to a client, but it's like, do something about it. Like, what's stopping me from actually addressing all these concerns I have and addressing like patterns that I've noticed, like with relationships or how I respond to certain things. I think for the most part, because of my personality type and because of like how I was conditioned, I'm just like naturally a people pleaser, and I love just to always have fun and to be laughing and to be sort of like this light for other people. And there's like never pressure to do that. That's definitely pressure I put on myself. But yeah, so 2020 just like completely flipped my entire world upside down. And I'm the type of person who cannot, like, my personality is like 0 to 100, and that's like my own tendencies. I wouldn't call them, I don't know what the term is, but like I've read a lot of psychology, and like I did my undergrad in psychology, and have read a lot of papers of what the DSM considers certain symptoms for personality disorders. And so I personally do not identify with a lot of things that are in the DSM, but I understand why it makes sense. And so sometimes it helps me understand why I am the way I am in some ways, and like why my brain is wired the way that it's wired. But I have such a hard time showing myself a little bit of compassion. Like it takes me a while to forgive myself for things or blame myself for things that have happened to me in the past that is like so out of my control. Okay, so all that to say is that I am trying to go on this sober journey because it's important to me. And it's so tough because I know how important it is to me, but it's not that easy to just like I said, just go for, like, I go 0 to 100, and then if I'm at 75, I'm like over it, and I have that idea of like fuck it mentality, like you are such a loser, like you will never like reach your goals, which is so not true, and these facts are not like, I don't believe these thoughts as facts, but like in the moment I think I'm a failure if I don't do the things that I'm supposed to be doing. Anyways, I need to give myself more credit, obviously, like I'm doing badass things and like really accomplishing so much more than I ever thought I would, especially considering the things that I've experienced in my life, and like addressing like unresolved trauma, like is like the list of trauma that I've experienced is so like, it's like this laundry list that like every time I think about it I just put it in the back of my mind because it's so overwhelming. And really to me it's like it puts me back into like this child who's like helpless, even though I know that I'm not, because I've overcome so much. But we are doing these class discussions about resiliency and how we often use that word. I find we overuse it for people and say like, oh, that child, these racialized kids, or like folks who have experienced a lot of trauma are so resilient, or like when we talk about, like, because my parents are immigrant refugees, when we talk about newcomers to like Western countries, we often say like they're so resilient for all the things that they've experienced and endured. And like, yes, I agree to a certain extent, but that doesn't make their experiences like any less valid or like dismissive in a way. Because like in the field that I work in, I hear that word all the time, and I used to call myself resilient all the time, and then now I'm thinking of it and I'm like, fuck that. Like, I just want to be looked at, or like at least see myself in different ways, and just being like a resilient, hardworking person, because then that can be problematic too, because then I get into a state of like, I can never make mistakes because look how far you've come. Like, it's fact. And it's also just like tough being a Black woman in the world. And this was a year that I have just like sort of tried to acknowledge all the ways that like I internalize racism, or I internalize colonization and ideas that were just like put on me without me acknowledging it, or even recognizing how awful things are, and they still continue to be. And yeah, I think that all adds up to where I'm at today, of addressing my shit and owning up to my shit, but also trying to take the blame off of myself like I normally do, and just maybe saying like there is no blame, and now we work towards healing, or I don't even know if I want to use the word healing, but maybe just being content with living. My friend said this the other day, which is like so accurate, because I tend to have friends who, which is most of us, who like think similarly to me, or like have similar experiences to me. So I have a lot of friends who we have like these talks about how our brains are wired, and why we think the way we think, and how we got here from like the way we were raised and the way we viewed the world. And we were just saying how like, especially me, I feel things so deeply. I like, ever since I was a kid, I was always like labeled too sensitive, or too like not too much, but like I'd cry a lot, and so teachers would talk to my parents about me crying too much. I would talk a lot in class, so that was a problem that needed to be fixed, apparently. I would socialize a lot, and that was like frowned upon. If I was too quiet, that was frowned upon. So like, it was so weird being socialized in a way that like, for me, I was thinking like, is it bad to have all these feelings? Like, what's wrong with me because I feel? And then I got I turned 18 and then met all these amazing human beings who like are my bestest friends, and they just acknowledge the fact that like there's nothing wrong with having feelings. It's just like, how do I like just being emotionally intelligent? It's like I think about this a lot. It's a weird thing to it's like hard to navigate sometimes if you're in spaces that don't allow for that and don't allow for you to be fully emotional or fully feel your feelings. I like to think I try to do it in a healthy way. Sometimes I don't, but in certain spaces it's just like not allowed. And so I remember just being a kid thinking like, fuck man, like I think too much, I ruminate a lot, I feel a lot, there must be something wrong with me. And I obviously don't agree with that anymore. But yeah, that's all to say that, what was my point? Feelings. I don't really know what the point was, but I'm just going to document these sort of videos once a week or once every few days, just to check in with myself and my brain, and just to go from there, because we're currently in lockdown where I'm from, and so it's gonna be an interesting, it's the second kind of full lockdown that we have in the region that I'm in, and so I'll be alone a lot. I think I'll see my parents sometimes, but it's just harder because of the lockdown. So I'm hoping that this will be a nice outlet to release some of my thoughts in a way that feels good to me. Normally we used to, which is bad, because I recognize it, like thinking about it back now, like when we were allowed to be in school, like we my grad program, it was just like all of our, like the students in our faculty had a little building, and we would just like meet for lunch and have these these really therapeutic talks, or sometimes we'd have talks in class that just felt so fucking good, and I miss that so much. And I know there's like I shouldn't always be using our class discussions for a way to like release, but like it was just so nice to hear other people's experiences or what they were going through. And now we're just doing school online, and it's like a shit show, and I hate it. So like it's not fun at all, but super grateful that I'm finishing my degree in 4 months. But yeah, so hopefully I'm going to use this outlet as a way just to maybe feel better, maybe not, just a cool way to document how I'm feeling from the beginning of 2021 and maybe at the end of 2021, and just like see what's going on. Okay, thanks for listening. Yeah, okay, peace. Bye.